Hi and welcome to Good Cajun Cooking. My name is David and today I'm going to help you prepare what is probably one of the most popular and famous dishes in North America, good old Cajun Jambalaya. Let's take a look at the ingredients we're going to use today. The vegetables we will use in our jambalaya today will begin with about 2 cups of chopped yellow onions. I do prefer to chop my onions and bell peppers in particular rather large, so you get a feel and a taste of the vegetables in the dish. 2 cups of celery, chopped fairly fine. 1 cup in all of bell peppers, both red and green. The red does add some color to the dish. About 1/4 cup of chopped or minced garlic, and I do prefer to use fresh garlic in this dish. 1 bunch of sliced green onions, which will go in near the end of cooking. The protein we're going to use today in our jambalaya will first of all consist of about 1 pound of fresh andouille sausage. Although I do find andouille sausage more available in different parts of the country, I do think that Louisiana makes the best. We'll also be using some pork, about 2 pounds of pork cubed. I prefer to use a Boston butt because I think it does cook up much more tender than some of the other cuts of pork. Now let's take a look at the herbs and spices that we will use in this dish. We will use 3 small bay leaves. The bay leaf is the leaf from the laurel tree. It adds a distinct flavor to the rice. However, it will have to be removed once cooking is complete. 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 2 teaspoons of dry ground mustard, 2 teaspoons of red pepper, preferably cayenne, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme leaves, 1/2 cup of finely chopped parsley, and when you chop the parsley up, make sure you remove all the stems that you can see, 3 teaspoons in all of coarse kosher salt, and 2 teaspoons of freshly ground black pepper. The final ingredients we're going to use in our jambalaya today would be 4 cups of extra long grain white rice, uncooked, and 7 to 8 cups of beef stock. The beef stock I'm going to use today is pre-prepared, although I do have a very good recipe for fresh beef stock. That decision will be up to you. The only other thing we will use is some type of fat, either vegetable oil, lard, Crisco, whatever you have handy. Myself, I'm going to use bacon drippings from this morning's breakfast, about 1/4 cup. The first thing we're going to do is brown our meat. In this cast iron skillet, I have about 1/4 cup of bacon drippings. You can use whatever fat might be available. I'm going to put the pork in, get it nice and brown. It's going to take about 30 minutes. We need to start frequently. I'm going to use salt and pepper to season it. Just a little bit of what we put aside, not all of it. After about 30 minutes of starting that pork, we're going to put the andouille in. We're going to brown that for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be ready to move to the next step. Let's get that pork in. It's going to sizzle really nicely when we put it in. We want to get this on about a medium-high heat because we do want to have the pork browning well. We also want to kind of have it stuck to the bottom a little bit. We're going to utilize some of those little bits that stick to the bottom as flavoring and color for the dish. When we get it to this point, we want to add some salt and season it up real good. About 1 teaspoon of what we put aside. And then we want to use some pepper. We're going to add layers of flavor here. We put salt. We're going to add some more salt and pepper later. But this will get us a good start. While our pork is browning, let's take a few minutes and chop up some onions and some bell peppers. The green onions and the celery and the garlic take some time, so I've already taken the liberty of slicing those up, so they'll be ready to go. Now I'm going to peel a couple of these onions and show you how I go about cutting them to get them the size that I like. I prefer to have my vegetables coarsely chopped and a little bit larger because I do like to see and taste what's in the dish. I don't know if there would be any reason you would want to hide that if someone was not fond of onions or bell peppers. The flavors all blend together like an orchestra in this dish, and they would never know if you chopped them finely enough. So we'll get these done. I don't know how familiar you guys are with jambalaya and where it came from, but there's really little doubt about its origin. When the Spaniards came over in the 1700s to the area that is now New Orleans, they brought their famous paella dish, which is a rice dish filled with local seafood. Since the ingredients that they used in their paella were not available, as readily available, they substituted oysters, shrimp, crabs, whatever was available at the time. That eventually evolved into jambalaya. The name jambalaya comes from the French word jambon, which means ham, and ham has often been a primary ingredient in jambalaya, and yaya is the African word for rice. So the first thing we're going to do here to chop our onion is we're going to chop it in half. I like to make it, as I said, coarse and larger pieces, so I'm only going to make one slice down the middle. If you wanted to chop it fine, you might make 2 or 3 slices. Then we come here and chop this part, make lines going across, and then we come back here. Always bend your knuckles here so you don't cut your fingertips off, and we're going to cut. Very simple to do. Just takes a little bit of practice. When we get to the end, we're just going to slice that up. And there's half of our onion, one of our onions. We're going to use about 2 cups, maybe a little bit more, of the onions in this dish. I normally don't measure it that closely, but I thought for the sake of this discussion and this lesson, it might be a little bit better if I at least gave you an idea of how much I was going to put in it. Now, there's our onion for the dish. Okay, we've cut up our onion, about 2 cups, maybe a little bit more. I've also taken the liberty of slicing up a nice red bell pepper. When I put bell pepper in, we're going to use about 1 cup, half red. The red adds a nice color to the dish, and the other half green. To get our bell pepper ready, I'm going to slice the crown off. Then I'm just going to slice these little bumps off the bottom. I'm going to set that aside. Cut this in half, and then clean out the inside. Get all those seeds out and get as much of this white off the inside as we can, because it's going to be a little bitter. Now, it's very simple. We're going to take our bell pepper, we can lay it flat. We make slices this way. And then we're going to bunch all that up together. And we're going to make 1, 2 cuts, and we're ready. Again, I like to keep it a little large because we don't want the bell pepper to get lost or hidden in this dish. It definitely adds a good flavor and a good color to the dish. So let's do the other one. We lay it flat, we slice, we grab it all in a bunch. 1, 2, and we're ready. And there's our bell pepper and onion all ready to go. Okay, it's been actually about 25 minutes rather than 30, but I feel like our pork is in pretty good shape. We have nice little brown chunks of cooked pork. We got to be able to scrape some of the little bits off the bottom. The next step is to pour in our andouille sausage, which we're going to do here. We're going to mix that up really good, and then we're going to cook this for another 15 minutes. Okay, we browned our meat and added our andouille sausage. It's been about 15 minutes, and you can see how nice and brown everything is. Throughout the course of the cooking of the meat, I've continued to stir and scrape those little bits off the bottom so we have plenty of flavor in the bottom of the pan. Right now we're going to turn it off and let it cool for about 10 or 15 minutes. I've let my dish cool off for about 10 minutes. I've put it back on the fire. During the time it was cooling, I drained out about a full cooking spoon, big cooking spoon of the oil and fat that was in it, and I left about the same amount in. Now what we want to do is add our onions and bell peppers, and we want to mix those in really well. And we reserve that oil because we want to get all this coated really well so that they'll all simmer down and cook really well, saute really well. We want to caramelize them, we want to get them kind of brown like the meat is. And then we'll add our garlic and celery as well. Now, We have that all mixed together really well. We're going to cook this down for about 15 minutes, stirring every minute or so. We want to keep it active. And then we'll come back and add the stock. It's been about 15 minutes, and as you can see, all of our vegetables cooked down and caramelized nice and brown. The next thing we're going to do is add all of our seasonings, the remainder of our seasonings, our salt, pepper, thyme leaves, cayenne, some dry mustard, and some cumin. We mix that up really well. It might seem like a lot of ingredients, but the rice will absorb a lot of it. So we usually over-season. I like to over-season when I cook with a lot of rice. Now once we get all that incorporated really well, the next step is to add our stock. So we've got about 8 cups of beef stock. We add all that in, mix it around good. We're going to bring this to a rolling boil. We're going to reduce it and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. As you can see, we've let this simmer down. We've added the stock and all the seasonings. We've let it cook down for about 10 minutes after bringing it to a rolling boil. I reduced the temperature to about a 3 on my stove. I have an electric stove. That would be a low heat. And we've cooked it down really nice. Now we're going to add our green onions. We're going to add some 3 bay leaves, some finely chopped parsley, and mix all that up really well. And then the final step is to add our rice. We've got 4 cups of long grain rice. We're going to add here, mix it up really well. Beautiful color, nice and brown. Got some red bell peppers and some green from the green onions and the bell peppers also. Now we're going to turn this fire up all the way. We're going to bring it to a boil, and as you would a normal pot of rice, you bring it to a boil. Once it boils, you reduce it down to a very low heat, cover it, and then leave it alone for about 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, you want to check it, see if the rice is tender enough. If not, give it another 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, it's been about 40 minutes, and I've been back into the kitchen to stir it 2 times. This is where we are. This is what it looks like. You can see all that beautiful brown color that's in there. You can see the red bell peppers. You can see green, you can see onions, and you can see the bits of meat that are in there. This is beautiful. This is exactly what it should look like. If you look at it or you taste it and you feel like the rice is not cooked well enough, you can always add just a little bit more stock, a cup at a time, and let it cook down for a few more minutes. This, I think, is done exactly the way we want it. We want to go ahead and find and pull out our bay leaves, which may take a minute since I did stir it a couple of times, and then we're ready to serve. And here's our finished plate of jambalaya. You can see the beautiful green and red color from the bell peppers, the deep brown of the rice, from the pork, the sausage, as well as from the beef stock. You can look at it and see it has pieces of pork and sausage. Let's go ahead and take a bite. It's perfect. Seasoned exactly right. It's not too salty. It has a little bit of heat on the back end. The meat is nice and tender. It's exactly the way the Cajuns intended it to be.